Today I was having a conversation with someone whose son was having a really hard time getting into a home in the Denver market. Today I'm going to talk to you about what you need to know before hiring a real estate professional to help you buy a home, and we'll touch a little bit on sell a home. But first, as always, Jeremy Kane, eXp Realty, living in the Denver suburbs. Please like, comment, subscribe. I'm going to bring my buddy John Shookman on in 1 second, and we're going to talk about this conversation and what we do differently for our clients to absolutely go above and beyond so that every real estate experience is absolutely the best one. So stay tuned. What's up? Here's John. He came out of nowhere. So John Shookman, Lancaster, PA, a real estate buddy of mine who's out here for the podcast conference, and we're going to talk about this. So John, tell us a little bit about that conversation you walked in on today with the lady who has a son looking for a place in Denver.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing was she was so frustrated that her son was, in her words, and we didn't get the full story, putting in aggressive offers, multiple offers, and losing out each and every time. And so what we kind of really talked to her about was how important it is to have an agent that is advocating for you, have an agent that also is working full time and like doing this, and not just available, 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. or something like that, but actually available when you need them. And, we also talked about how you have to have conversations, more and more conversations with the agent. Maybe you're the buyer's agent, and conversation with the listing agent about what they really are hoping for, and not just, absolutely the most money, but what else? And just conversations. Hey, what can we do to get this deal done? Conversations with your clients about the realities of the market. Hey, she was saying how her son was putting in, list price offers, and she felt like that was aggressive. Well, you got to educate your clients that might not actually be aggressive, especially in a seller's market like we are experiencing all over the country. So it's just education, conversations, things like that.
Yeah. And I think the conversation boils down to telling a story, right? And oddly enough, she actually has a podcast about telling stories. And I said, you really have to come as the agent to tell the story for your client. If you're telling the story or submitting an offer just by shoving the paperwork down the listing agent's throat and hoping and praying that it gets accepted, that's going to be a problem. And so if your agent is not able to have those constant communications with you, if the agent is constantly not willing to, pick up the phone. Now you're working, you would rather, talk through text, great, but you have to pick up that phone and have a conversation as an agent with the agent and just get an idea, right? Because what I do is I say, okay, this is kind of my feeling, but let me call the listing agent and see what's going on. They're going to tell me everything I need to know unless they're extremely, traditional and just, one word answers or whatever. Sometimes that happens, but then we can kind of delineate and make decisions. But at that point, we know that we're a needle in a haystack. But if you're going to talk to a client, you're going to talk to an agent, they're going to give you a little bit of snippets. You take that back to the client and say, okay, A, B, C, this is what I think. And so that's the number one thing. And I know John's an amazing communicator with his clients. And
I think too, like Jeremy, people love to talk, right? Many people love to talk. I've had agents, especially me. I've had agents, listing agents I get them on the phone and they keep going and going and going. And they're like, oh yeah, well we had, let's say the house is 200,000. Yeah, we had an offer at 215 and then we got this and then we got this. Now, I'm not asking them for this and they probably shouldn't be telling me this, but whatever they're sharing, I have responsibility. I'll take that back to my buyer and say, hey, he probably told me too much, but here's what I got. And this is how we can structure our offer either more aggressively or maybe not have to go in as aggressive because we know, hey, they're only 5,000, 10,000 over list, things like that.
And I think timing of the offer is huge in that situation, right? You don't want to just throw your offer in the mix if they're going to divulge all that information. So there's different strategies that we use to get offers in and not go above and beyond escalation clauses and things like that. But that's not what it's really about from your perspective as a client looking for the right agent. So that's first and foremost, make sure that communication's happened. The next thing that I talk about is education on the market, right? John talked about seller's market this, seller market that, but it starts with that initial conversation and educating our clients. And if your agent's just like, yeah, just let me handle it all, I'll do it all for you, whatever, that's probably a sign that they're probably not the best fit for you, because sure, if I come to you and I provide you all this education, you say, Jeremy, I don't care, I trust you. That's a totally different story than me saying, okay, this is, the average sales price, average days on market, this zip code's hot, this zip code's cold, and just understanding what's going on in that specific area that house is, for sale in is absolutely huge. So talk a little bit about your market knowledge and kind of what you portray to your client, kind of what that looks like, so they would know what to ask, right?
Yeah, I think the agent has to absolutely be an expert in that area. Now, I've sold homes for sure, like outside of my main area, but when I'm like a Lancaster agent and I say I'm a Lancaster agent, it's because I live in Lancaster in that area. And I think it's just education, knowing the market, knowing, the schools, the areas, what's around. Lancaster, actually a few cities near me, Lancaster, Harrisburg, York, and Reading, and Lidditz, actually, so 4 or 5 were recently talked about in USA Today's top 10 places to retire. Well, what do I do with that information? I don't just sit home and sit on the couch and watch TV with it. When I get approached by a client, I explain to them, hey, these 4 or 5 cities were like within an hour of Lancaster were all listed in USA Today's top 10 places to retire. So what does that mean is coming over the next 5-10 years? Prices are going up, so there's no better time for you to get into a home than right this moment so that you beat all those retirees now coming to the town.
And if you're not retiree age, maybe you just call me and come to Denver.
That's right. But I think it's just about education and educating them of that and saying and the other thing too is, right, people are trying to get out of the big cities, Baltimore, Philadelphia, both within an hour of me. People have seen the price of cost of living go up in those areas to the point where they're like, we got to find somewhere else to live that's close enough that we can commute, 45 minutes to an hour, but it's cheaper cost of living. Well, Lancaster is one of those places. And so when you have that knowledge and share that with your clients, go above and beyond for them, it kind of helps them make some decisions about when to buy, how much to offer, things like that.
Yeah, and the future, right? If you know your clients, going to live there for 2 to 5 years, then we really need to look at that market trend and whatever. If they're going to be there for 30, like, okay, maybe it's a slower appreciating area or something like that. And that's okay because this is their forever home. It's not immediately. So just understanding your client situation in the market they're in and really diving into the market. And the last thing that is really important to find a great agent that's going to help you compete is your connection with the community, right? And this goes lenders, inspectors, all the way down. I'm going to tell you first and foremost that as a lender, I'm also going to have them communicate, right? So I'm going to call my lending partner and I'm going to say, hey, John and Sarah just went under contract. Please give XYZ listing agent a call and, whatever. So you're basically taking a step out of the agent's hands who should be calling. As a listing agent, you should be calling the lenders who are providing the money to finance a deal. But also that's another, cheerleader for your client to put us to the front, and another set of ears to listen, right? Hey, I talked to her yesterday, right? We were going to put an offer in, we put it in. Now we finally submitted it because we got the signatures and everything. Now I'm going to have the lender call today, say we had the conversation on Friday. Today is Saturday, the lender's going to call and they can get a little bit more information and, communicate that to us as agents. So having that tight connection, I know you do a lot with inspections and inspectors. And in our market, inspections are typically had. It's if they're going to object or not. But one thing you do is get the inspector in right away. So talk a little bit about that and your process as far as that goes.
Yeah, well, first, even just really quick to the lender point, like the person we met earlier was saying, they were using a lender. We won't throw that lender under the bus, but we were like, well, the issue with that lender is they're available Monday through Friday. That if it's a Saturday night, you could call your preferred lenders and, they're going to answer for you because they know if he's calling me at 9 o'clock on a Friday or Saturday, it's an emergency. He needs something now. So I would say that. And in terms of like the inspections, knowing the contingencies, what they're going to be. I've had clients, I've had listing agents, again, I'll call, try to get to know them, build the rapport, and they'll say to me like, well, don't submit any offers with inspections. We're absolutely not taking any offers with inspections. And so I like a good challenge. So I'll say like, okay, well, my client wants inspections. I'm certainly not gonna, I don't want to get sued. So I'm not gonna say you may not have inspections. So I'm gonna say, well, they're a first time home buyer. They really want inspections. How about this? I know you're saying no offers with inspections. How about this? I've already talked to my inspector. They can be there tomorrow. They can give me a report by the end of the day. If we go under contract today on Wednesday, by Friday, we could waive that inspection contingency. And when you kind of, again, I think real estate as agents is all about how can you think outside the box. When you do that, suddenly they're like, oh, we would consider that. It's I literally was like, give me 36 to 48 hours and we can waive this piece of this, this part of the contingencies. And I have beaten out offers with no inspections because my price was higher, escalation, whatever. And I still got the inspections, but I said, we'll have it really quick, 2 days. By the way, we're not going to ask for repairs. Like, yeah, we'll pull out if and I usually do the inspection so quick, I don't even hand in the deposit yet.
Right.
But basically it's like, hey, we're not going to ask for repairs unless like the roof's caving in or like you're on a sinkhole. We're not backing out of this deal. And I educate the clients and say, hey, here's how inspections are working now. Like repairs are pretty tough to get, but you can still get the inspection for your peace of mind. Just know that they don't want you to nitpick and we're not going to nitpick. It would have to be something huge to pull out. And so again, conversations and leveraging those partners and, speaking to the agent.
So he's getting on the phone with his inspector saying, hey, I need you over here within 36 hours. They're making it happen because they're partners. So it's really about, the network, and it's not the good old boy club by any means, but it's that professional relationship that they have so that your agent is putting you in the best position, because in our limited inventory space right now, that perfect home might not come around for,
Absolutely.
3 to 6 months or whatever, because we have such limited inventory, such limited stuff coming on as we head into schools and the winter, fall season. We traditionally see, demand kind of slow down and, housing pick up, right? Or inventory pick up. And we're not feeling that in our market, at least right now. And so it's going to be super tight as, people kind of pull their houses off the market for the holidays and things like that. Inventory, already very limited inventory, is going to be tight. So make sure that you're asking these questions. If you have any questions for me, obviously I would love to be your real estate agent. If you're moving to Pennsylvania, I can hook you up with this guy. He actually is a pretty good real estate agent too. So, but yeah, that's what we got. It's of utmost importance right now that you hire an agent that is going to put their best foot forward for you and really take care of you. So John, thanks so much for coming on today. As always, like, comment, subscribe, share this with anybody who might be in that situation, who's maybe had a frustrating experience as a buyer, because the market is hard. However, John and I both are getting our buyers not only under contract, but to the closing table and moving in. So absolutely reach out if you need anything. Hope that helps, and make sure you're picking your agent wisely.
See you guys.